Our theme this week is going the extra mile, and the verse Matthew 5:41 is where that comes from. It says, "If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2." And you know, we in America don't really have to deal with people making us go a mile somewhere. But I'd like to put that in perspective a little bit. Let's say you were driving on your way to work or school, and law enforcement or police or something like that pulled you over, and they said, "I'm going to get in your car, and you're going this way, but I'm going to get in your car, and you're going to drive me 15 or 20 minutes that way, and then I'll get out of your car." Well, that's going to make you late, it's going to be inconvenient, and it seems unfair. But that's the way it was in Israel, because Rome occupied Israel. They were in charge, and they passed a law that said any Roman soldier can force any able-bodied man to carry their pack 1 mile, and no more than 1 mile. Well, what if a Roman walked up to a Christian, a follower of the way, and said, "You have to carry my pack 1 mile." And he said, okay, he grabbed his pack, and he walked that mile with him, and then he said, "All right, you're free to go." And the Christian said, "Well, your city's only about 5 minutes away, a few more minutes this way. I'll just keep going with you, carry it the rest of the way for you." That'd be ridiculous. Why would you go even further out of your way to help someone who is your enemy, really, because that's what Rome was to Israel. Why would you go further out of your way to help your enemy? But that's because that's the way of Jesus. That's what he's called us to do. He says in Matthew 5:43, he says, "You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor as yourself." Love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say love your enemies as well. That's ridiculous by the world standard. That's crazy. Why would we love our enemy? Because Jesus called us to be so different from the rest of the world that it's obvious, and that they ask questions, and he wants us to tell them when they ask those questions. I do that because I'm a Christian. I do that because that's the way I was taught. And Luke 6:28 goes into that a little bit. It says, "Bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you." That's kind of a weird notion, but that's what Jesus calls us to do. He calls us to go out of our way to help our enemy and to be so different that people ask questions, and they look at that and they say, "Well, why would you do that?" Simon, I would like to give you 2 examples from the text of people going the extra mile. Simon of Cyrene, this story is from Matthew 27. Jesus was walking to the cross. He was carrying his cross. He was going to Mount Calvary, and he'd been being beaten and mocked and spit upon and just treated like dirt. And he was carrying this cross, and it was weighing him down, both mentally, I'm sure, but definitely physically. And he was carrying this thing for all the way to the mountain. And the Romans called out Simon of Cyrene, and they said, he's getting weak. You're going to carry this cross the rest of the way. And he said, okay, because either get killed or go to prison if you say no. There wasn't much choice. You had to do it. So he gets out, he carries that cross the rest of the way. And that's because Rome forced him to. I'd like to give you another example of 2 people who did it because that's what they were taught by Jesus. And these people are Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. This was just after the crucifixion. And these 2 men had been, they'd been touched by Jesus' ministry. They heard the things he preached. We have Nicodemus from John chapter 3. 3rd chapter John is when Jesus and Nicodemus had their talk. And these 2 men asked, after Jesus died, they asked for his body. And the Roman soldiers gave it to him. And so they took this body and they took it and carried it to Joseph of Arimathea's grave. His tombstone, the one he paid for that was meant for him. And they placed Jesus there. And the good news about our Lord is he didn't stay in that tomb. He rose up from that tomb. Rome has fallen. The empire is not the way it was back in Jesus' day. It doesn't rule, many countries. And they told us to go 1 mile. They forced people to go 1 mile. Jesus asked us to go the 2nd mile, and he rose from the grave. He is risen, and he reigns forever, and that's why we should go the 2nd mile.